So today we're going to explore what your customers are really trying to tell you and how to turn that insight into competitive advantage. You've probably heard this before. People on the team, you may have even said this yourself, our net promoter score is great, but churn is really kind of creeping up at the moment. So on paper, everything looks good, but you can feel like something's wrong, something's behind that. And the difficulty is that customers start to disengage, your growth is going to slow, and people are asking why. Nobody knows why this is. And one of the reasons this is that Net Promoter doesn't really tell the whole story. And here's the issue. NPS, Net Promoter Score, is a number, it's not a narrative. So it gives you the score, but it doesn't give you the story. It doesn't tell you why people feel the way they do or what's changing. And it can even create a false sense of confidence to some extent. And there's a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind in terms of how you think about this within your business. And some really good, analogies to talk with your colleagues about, or to explain NPS in a little bit more detail and some of the stuff it doesn't capture. If you think about it in the context of a football game, it's like knowing the score without knowing how the game was played itself. Similarly, it's like knowing the temperature of the house, but not why it's on fire. And if you're looking at this as a measure for understanding more about loyalty within your business, or the satisfaction your customers have over time, you really need to get into the root cause here and understand what's causing the churn or the lack of retention, rather than just knowing what the measure is, essentially. And it's really, really important because you can't really grow on guesswork here. So data is not insight, and insight is not action. And without depth here, and without depth of understanding, your strategy is always going to be becoming reactive, basically. So you're looking at a lagging indicator, something which is showing you what's happened in the past, and then you're adjusting your strategy accordingly. So you're adjusting your strategy relating to symptoms, not causes. And what we found, and there's a great quote here from Bain, is that insight-led companies grow 30% faster than non-insight-led companies, and that's not a small competitive edge. So for most businesses, that's market-leading levels of momentum in terms of your growth. And really, the organizations that differentiate them and are truly insight-led are looking much more further forward than they are looking back. So this isn't just learning what's happened previously. This is about putting in place the conditions to be able to anticipate what's coming down the line, essentially. And it's one of the real tricky things with NPS and with Net Promoter Score, is it's very much telling you what's happened after the fact, at the point where you can't necessarily make the changes that you want to be making. So what I want to put forward today, and the perspective that we believe in at Polar Insight, is that we want to start moving from noise to navigation. So this is very much looking and transforming from feedback and collecting feedback into foresight. It's looking at metrics and thinking about metrics and transforming that into forward-looking momentum, and really moving from these kind of passive identifiers of what's happened previously into much more active strategy development, research that can help you develop what to do next, and about collecting better feedback. So this isn't about collecting more feedback, it's about understanding better than we did previously. There are three main customer behaviors which are really important to think about here. And for some of you on the call today, this isn't going to be really new, but it's something that we often forget. And with measures like NPS, with measures like CSAT score, customer effort, all of these different things, too often some of these things can be neglected. So it's just really important to go back to the basics, and they're the basics because generally they work, and they have a high impact in terms of the amount of time spent on them within a business. And so the 3 customer behaviors that matter most, first of all, are buying to solve a pain or chasing a gain. So this is very much a functional behavior that people take part in, and very much the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which many of you, I'm sure, will have heard of. You've then got, though, once they've moved past this, you've got their when they stay with the business, when they feel aligned, when they feel supported, when they feel in control. So buying, staying, and then all too often, something which gets neglected is when they leave. So when their needs evolved, or when they get into a period of feeling misunderstood in terms of their relationship with your organization or what you're delivering versus what they need. And ultimately, if your research doesn't answer these, you're going to be kind of flying blind, basically, because you're always going to be missing a key part of the different behaviors that make up one of your customers. They're not one-dimensional beings. They are multi-dimensional with lots of different things going on at the same time. They will be in one of these states and simultaneously with another provider or another organization be in another one of those states, and we can all hold those behaviors simultaneously. But it's just really, really important to make sure that we're looking at each one of them rather than just one in isolation, because they all impact one another in terms of those kind of unmet needs and those broken expectations. In terms of your relationship with your customers, those can also end up being much stronger emotions than perhaps those first, fixing a pain, chasing a gain style feelings at the beginning of your interaction with them. And just as a demonstration in terms of the difference of understanding these types of emotions and these types of behaviors versus NPS as a metric for scoring your understanding of your customer. So you can have, very often you can have loud net promoter scores, but then you can have quiet churn underneath. And this is really trying to demonstrate more about what the net promoter hasn't shown in a particular circumstance here. So it's really important that small fixes can sometimes equal these large increases in retention. So your NPS in this example here on the screen, NPS said that everything was fine. It was good. It was at a level that your executive team was comfortable with. But then when you conduct customer interviews and you uncover some of the deeper confusion underneath that, and you start getting in front of customers, talking to them, learning more about what their needs are, this can uncover onboarding confusion. And ultimately, in the example here at the bottom, we looked at this for a client recently, solved this by talking to people and increased retention by 17% in 60 days, in 2 months. And I think this is a good example of this quote on the right-hand side from a study there's a CRM called ACT CRM. And they found that 5% increase in customer retention can lead to a 25 to 95% increase in company profitability. So in terms of kind of transformational change to a business, there is an argument, and there is a cohort and a community of people out there who would focus on increasing NPS by 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. I was at a conference recently where someone demonstrated an entire case study about this. They were talking for an hour or so about the incremental increases in NPS that a change had made. The reality, though, is in terms of impact for the organization, things like really small percentage increases in retention or decreases in churn can have this enormous leveraged impact in terms of profitability and in terms of growth for a business. And it's the type of change and the type of transformation which can all too often be missed if you just look on the kind of the quantitative side of things and you look just at NPS scores. So I'd really, really encourage you here to look a little bit deeper and to go back to what we were talking on the previous slide. It's really about asking why, so why people have bought in the first place, why they're staying, and then ultimately making sure that you're asking why they're leaving in a lot of detail. So don't just do this type of work at the discovery stage where you really want to go a few layers deep. This is about maintaining that level of depth and that level of context all the way through the journey of customers interacting with your product or service. And a good way to think about this, and just a good model to keep in mind, is to think about the 3 levels of strategic insight. And there's 3 that I will cover now, one of which people all too often stop at. And basically those 3 levels of strategic insight are descriptive strategic insight. So this is capturing what's happening. There's diagnostic strategic insight. So this is, once you know what's happening, diagnosing why it's happening. But what's really, really important to look at, and something which, as I mentioned, all too often people neglect, is predictive strategic insight. So once you understand what's happening and why it's happening, you then want to uncover what's next and what should we do about that. So it's moving from understanding what's happened to what the impact of this is, to then how that impact might transform a setting, a product, a service, a company. And it's all too often that most teams stop here. So we pick up evidence, we capture a view of what's happening, but then we don't follow on from that to understand why is this happening, and then what should we do about that, basically. So it's about moving to that kind of so what state at the end of capturing insight from people around your business. And this is forward-moving strategy. So this is essentially level 2 and 3 here, is really what impressive, market-leading strategy and strategic consulting is really about. Don't just tell people what's happening, but tell people the impact of that and why that's important. And there's various ways you can do this. So open the qualitative toolbox, go beyond surveys. There's a whole load of different ways of doing this. You can carry out interviews to hear the full context on a one-on-one basis. So you can carry out focus groups, talk to multiple people at the same time. You can look at jobs to be done frameworks, so understanding real decision making, what the particular jobs people have to get done at particular times are. You can create listening panels, so this is about spotting emerging needs over time, monitoring change, really building the conditions so that you're consistently listening to people and getting a sense of what's coming up for them rather than just what's happening for them now. And then you can also look at things like churn forensics. So spot the breaking points in your customer journey, really look in depth to pinpoint some of those basically kind of decision breaking moments. And that is how you're going to go to get the story behind the score, ultimately. It's all about building that context, all about building that richness beyond a number on a screen. And it's important here to reflect on this, and it's very important when you're conducting this type of research and when you're talking to people in this context, that not just anyone will do in terms of your interviews. So you want to be speaking to decision makers about what it is that you're designing or you're launching or you're trying to improve, not survey takers. You want to prioritize relevance of these people, not just the number of people you're speaking to. So this is very much a quality versus quantity exercise here, to really dive into what are the behaviors and motivations and reasons why people are doing things, so that you can move into that 3rd stage, into that level of understanding what might happen next. What is the consequence of this? What's the impact of it? And always remember, and I'm sure for some of you on this call, you will have seen this many, many times before, but it's really important to stress this in the work that we do and in the work that you may be doing if you're talking to your customers and if you're talking to your users, is remember that you are not your user. So talk to people who are using the product or buying the service or following the learning or content you might be developing. Whoever that other person is, that stakeholder, that you are designing for, you're researching for, or researching with, please do keep in context that you are not your user, and you need to go out and talk to those people. And only then you'll be able to develop really customer-centric, user-centric products and services. It's important as well to make this a habit. So don't make this a kind of handoff at the end of a project. You know, we're all too used to the routine of carrying out some research, developing a report, and then it gets handed off to someone else who then implements that, puts it into planning, product development, customer experience, etc., etc. What you want to be doing here to be able to move beyond Net Promoter Score and even beyond customer satisfaction as well, in terms of just monitoring those measurements, is you want to embed this into regular team decision cycles. So how can you create these faster feedback loops so that you can shrink the gap between learning and doing? So it's about moving from strategy, insight to strategy, to delivery, to feedback, back to the beginning, insight, strategy, delivery, feedback. Keep on going through that loop, and don't be afraid as someone leading this charge within your organization to talk to people and say, we're going to need to be involved at each one of these stages, because that's going to inform our next piece of insight. That's going to inform how we develop strategy. That's going to inform how we change delivery. This shouldn't be a one-off piece of work. This should be something that you build into a habit, so that any time activity is taking part in the business, you're brought in, you're consulted, you're informed about what's going on, because that's going to inform ultimately the quality and the impact of the insight that you're cultivating and delivering. A really useful way to think about this as well, and just a kind of quick method, something to keep in the back of your in your back pocket, is a loop that we use here at Polar Insight. We call it the tilt method, and basically this is about tracking what's really happening. So this is really that kind of descriptive, that's that first stage that I mentioned previously. You then want to identify, once you've tracked what's really happening, you want to identify what's driving it. After that, you then want to leverage the learning from this to design a smarter experience. And then ultimately you want to test the improvement to ensure it's producing results. That then tells you what to do next. You can then go back to tracking what's really happening, identifying what's driving it, leverage, and it's this nice recurring loop that will help you transform insight into action in your business. And broadly, what will allow you to, even though you're working through this kind of rinse and repeat method or repetitive set of actions or habit, it's going to be what allows you to improve as quickly as possible. And this is demonstrated in a quick story here from a customer that we were working recently with, where in-depth interviews revealed some user confusion about accessing a knowledge base. So this was really quite a kind of hidden problem, let's say, or hidden confusion. It took a few interviews. It took a few. It took more in-depth analysis, I suppose, with that particular participant, to be able to really uncover what the root cause was. And this was kind of through asking why, going down that path. And what we identified was that there was a small layout tweak needed and a bit of copy change, nothing too major. And what that did, it was increased usage of the knowledge base by 40% in 3 weeks. And as an associated impact of that, we then saw that retention was much stronger because people knew how to use the product better. And so it all kind of looped back into, okay, so how can we identify some of these other small layout tweaks, small copy changes, which might be having this huge impact on our overall retention. So just a quick example there of it, of this process really kind of playing out. And broadly, it's very important here to remember that when you build with insight, research equals competitive advantage. And the reason for that is that This research is going to allow you to align your teams faster, and your teams are going to start moving in sync, essentially, so that those iteration cycles within your business are going to speed up. You're also going to be reducing risk, which means that you can make more confident decisions. And as we know, the quicker you can make those decisions, the quicker, even if they are the wrong decisions, you can then learn from them and again iterate, move forward, develop your thinking much quicker than that of your competitors. And finally, you're going to be able to grow smarter, so you're going to have fewer surprises, you're going to have more wins. So that's not to say you won't have any surprises. You know, research is all about understanding as much as we can within the context that, and the time that we have. There will still be surprises, but you're going to have more wins than surprises by implementing this type of thinking and moving your analysis of your customer experience more from let's measure what's happened previously into let's think about what's going to happen next, and let's be more proactive with our strategy based on what our customers are telling us and based it on what they are telling us is going to be kind of coming down the line, essentially. A quick bonus for everyone on the call today. If you've got any questions or challenges you'd like to discuss in particular, you can book a free 30-minute insight diagnostic with our team. This will help you map your gaps. It's going to help you spot some quick wins and ultimately get clarity around some of the topics that we've spoken over today. Please feel free to get in touch after today, and we can get that booked in for you.